Okay, picture this. It's Thursday night and you and your boys are playing some Mario Kart. Bernard's been talking trash all night, but he can't back it up because you're comfortably sitting in first and he's bringing up the rear. And then he hits you with this. He starts laughing, you crash into a thing, a dinosaur wearing Uggs passes you, and then all of a sudden, you just might be the most irate schmuck in the Western Hemisphere. I'll do you one better. The next weekend, Bernard starts talking hot garbage again, so you decide let's settle this like men and duke it out in some Smash. You start playing, and about halfway through the round, right as you're starting to feel good, Palkia shows up and flips your controls. Suddenly right is left is right, and if right is wrong, then I don't want to be right. You accidentally run off the edge and Bernard gets the dub. Palkia, you son of a bitch. It's such a strange feeling when a game starts lying to you, when it takes your controls or your display and then tweaks it just a little bit to be inaccurate, which makes your life more difficult, but to be clear is sometimes pretty hilarious.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh, black! What is happening?
Controls that are delayed or over-exaggerated, screens that warp, block information, or move on their own, or when your D-pad/joystick suddenly flips on you and forces you to move in the opposite direction you want to go so that you can move in the direction you actually want to go. All of the above are examples of something called interface screws. Generally, these are done to make the player feel a certain way. Maybe the game wants you to feel dizzy or like you're hallucinating. Instead of every copy of Yoshi's Island coming with a free hallucinogen to complement this stage, Nintendo made the button inputs really delayed, warped the display, and messed with Yoshi's momentum a little bit to make him feel randomly heavier and off balance. Probably avoided a few lawsuits with that decision. In Earthbound, the ramblin' evil mushrooms cause confusion in each battle, but outside of battle, they'll turn your controls clockwise or counterclockwise to make you feel just as confused as your boy Ness. At the Golden Ridge in Celeste, the winds are ridiculously strong, so depending on which way they're blowing, you'll either have to hold left to keep from flying away like an old Walmart bag, or mash right so hard that your thumb turns purple from just trying to move a freaking foot towards the next screen. Now, players generally have mixed feelings on interface screws because, let's be honest, I'm supposed to calculate mid-fight exactly how to do a forward air when my controls are backwards? Oh, and I've got to recover first? Wait, I'm dead. Just kidding. Victory is for people with friends. To a lot of folks, interface screws feel unfair, and I think that's an understandable complaint in a lot of cases. When a game reverses your controls or adds some sort of visual augmentation to your display, it's sort of like adding a new gameplay mechanic that you have to learn to work around. And when you have to make that adaptation in the middle of a level or a fight, and the consequences for failing are high, and you have to learn how to adapt at a critical moment, it can feel pretty unreasonable. Imagine if Shovel Knight hit you with these Pepto-Bismol cauldrons for the first time right at the end of a level in a really tough room. Also imagine that there are no checkpoints, so death means going all the way back to the beginning of the level. You'd be expected to know how to navigate this new obstacle that you've never seen before in one of the most stressful parts of the level. No preparation, just go. Go right now and don't die. It'd be like a serious pop quiz on the first day of class, which is just downright diabolical. Like the good man over at GMTK once said, and I'm paraphrasing, new mechanics should usually be introduced in a safe environment. It gives you a chance to size up new concepts risk-free so that it feels fair when the difficulty and the complexity rise later. And Shovel Knight actually does do this for the buckets of goo, in case you were curious. So when you run into the fuzzies in Yoshi's Island for the first time, you're given a nice little safe area to get accustomed to being an inebriated dinosaur with an infant. And then once you've gotten the hang of the controls or just let the dizzy effect wear off, you can move on to bigger and tougher things. Another way to make interface screws much more fair is to keep things low stakes. In Celeste, if you die because the wind just form tackled you into some spikes, relax. You respawn quickly and won't have to restart the entire chapter. Just try again until you get it. When the stakes are low and you have time and space to adjust to them, interface screws can be a lot of fun. The rotated controls in Earthbound are fair because you have a moment to adjust to the directions so you can feel it out before you head off to your destination. Rogue Legacy flips the screen on you if you end up with a vertigo trait, but it starts you in this early area where you aren't in any real danger yet. The big owl Malfestio, I think I said that right, and Monster Hunter will hit you with this yellow mist that reverses your controls, but you can dodge it and its effects are temporary. In Limbo, this little brain slug will do the walking for you and take away your left and right controls entirely, but if you die, you respawn pretty close to where the slugs first grab you so that you can try again quickly and figure out the puzzle. The ink on screen in Mario Kart blocks your view, but nothing. It's unfair. This will drive a man to the point of insanity. It'll make you so angry that you might yell at a pizza guy for knocking in the middle of a race. And the pizza may have been ordered for your birthday, and you may have just ruined your own birthday party. Now you might think, Daryl, that's awfully specific. Did you yell at a pizza guy once because of Mario Kart? And to that I say, the answer is not important. Anyways, the ink genuinely is pretty dang annoying, yes I did, regardless of how little it actually blocks your view, but hey, it's Mario Kart, it's supposed to be unfair, says so right on the box. What do you want, a new F-Zero? Yeah, me too, kid. But then again, the ink actually is fair to a certain degree. You have to adjust to it out of nowhere in the middle of an intense race, which is pretty applesauce, but it's fair in that it happens to everyone playing, except for the one who used it, who is pretty much always farther back in the pack and could probably use the help. It's the same reason the dizzy dancing minigame in Mario Party 2 and the rotisserie minigame in Mario Party 6 work just fine. Your controls are reversed, so you're hindered, but everyone is at the same disadvantage. And that's why here it feels fair, and why here it feels like you just stubbed your toe on the corner of your grandma's mahogany coffee table. Now, the real problem with interface screws comes when you take that distortion and place it on an NPC or a non-player character, or as my mom would call it, when you let the computer play. Because what exactly is happening when the computer's controls get reversed? Does it process it the same way we would and try to adapt? I'm no programmer, so honestly I don't know how it's addressed from a coding standpoint if a CPU experienced an interface screw. But generally one of two things happen from the player's point of view in these cases. One, the CPU acts completely stupid and kind of ruins any challenge there was. I mean seriously, are they even trying here? Like what is? Or two, it does absolutely nothing, or at least feels like it doesn't do anything, since you can't exactly check the CPU screen for ink. Is this toy poodle really getting in the computer's way when that adorable face blocks the stage? How could you even begin to tell? Outside of programming more complex AI, I really don't have a solution for this other than to maybe play with humans more often, have more friends? Solid advice there, Daryl. Because the interface screws really do shine when they're used in a multiplayer environment and when there are actual people trying to deal with them. If I use MODOK's jamming bomb in MVC3, I want to witness my opponent react to the reverse controls. I want to see Bernard struggle. When I was doing research for this video, two things really surprised me. One was that the reverse controls mechanic was really common in fighting games, which like we established earlier may not be a good home for it since it feels super unfair when you have to figure that out during a high stakes matchup. But the second thing I found was that people often get really good at adapting to the swap and it kind of becomes something to be ready for in a lot of cases. So since this is Psych of Play, let's wrap this up by digging into what exactly is going on cognitively when people deal with these interface screws and how they can actually get pretty good at handling them. Up front, we need to establish that when you are #gaming, your brain is running off of three different types of information: auditory, visual, and proprioceptive, which refers to where each part of your body is in relation to itself. But right now in this context, we're pretty much just talking about the proprioception of your fingers. Your brain uses these three sources of data to make sense of what is happening in-game and how that relates to your decision making. It bridges the gap between every physical button press and every digital. And it does this so often that eventually every held trigger or tilted joystick becomes second nature. You don't have to look at the controller anymore, and every action you make doesn't feel like thumbs on arbitrary plastic, it feels like a unique action based on your finger movement. Doing the in-game verbs becomes subconscious, and you develop something called automaticity, which if you've seen this video you will know all about in excruciating detail. But when controls get reversed or delayed or altered in any way, something funny happens. That automaticity that you've developed becomes an obstacle. The audiovisual information and the proprioceptive information your mind is processing doesn't match. Your thumb is going one way and Ness is going another, and it sort of causes this error. It genuinely makes you feel confused, and going against your deeply ingrained schema of how to move is a bizarre experience. Which is why I think the mechanic is so often used to convey that uneasy or just plain bass-ackwards sensation. If you've ever done the trace a shape in the mirror experiment, you'll know that it's the exact same feeling. If you want to try it home, basically you have to trace a shape with a Sharpie, but you can't look directly at your hand or the paper. You have to do everything while looking in a mirror, which reverses the control of your drawing hand. It's a real-life interface screw, which is just, honestly, science has gone too far. But what's fascinating about this is that with practice, most people get better. Studies that use the mirror drawing test typically find that people's first try goes about as well as Super Bowl 53 went for the Rams, but after several trials they adapt and get much more efficient at making shapes in the mirror. Even the famous amnesic patient Henry Molaison, who literally had a frontal lobotomy, improved every time he tried, and he couldn't even remember that he had done the exam from one trial to the next. I've done a ton of digging, and honestly I can't find a definitive answer on how our minds adapt to the reverse controls. But overall, it seems that over time, our brains will create a secondary set of automatic movements for a given scenario, sort of a second string button mapping. So if a specific set of criteria are met, like if nicotine caffeine hits me with the confused movement skill in Samurai Shodown 2, I now need to switch to my other mental control set, where I move away from the direction I want to go, and then just play normally. And yes, his name really is Nicotine Caffeine. It's sort of like swapping between a swing in golf and a slap shot in hockey. Both are very similar, but you'll need to quote-unquote shift gears to account for the subtle differences. All that said, I guess it's no surprise that people can get pretty good at handling reverse controls, even in a fighting game where the stakes are high, because, let's be honest, when would you ever take a fighter seriously before you put a ton of practice and preparation into it? You probably aren't coming across that jamming bomb or that confused movement skill without knowing what you're getting yourself into. So, is Spear Pillar fair? If everyone prepared for it, I reckon so. But hey, we can always just not use it or a ton of other stages in the competitive scene, you know, certainly wouldn't hurt anyone's feelings, right? Ultimately, I love interface screws, and in my experience, they typically make for a damn good time, especially when they mess with our controls. And the mirror drawing test just reinforces their validity as a tool to make the player feel befuddled and just plain goofy. I know I didn't go exceedingly in depth about the visual screws that mess with your screen, but I don't think they need much explaining. I feel like they do a pretty great job of explaining themselves. Sometimes they're scary, sometimes they're adorable, sometimes they're infuriating, but no matter the type of interface screw, they will always be sure to get a reaction out of the player, and I think that's what makes them so much fun. Alright, you made it all the way to the end. You are simply the best kind of person, and don't let anyone tell you different. A huge shout out to the boys over at r/AskGames and my consistently kind-hearted subscribers for all of the great examples of interface screws. You guys made making this so much easier, and you are my heroes. Did you happen to wonder how exactly Henry Molaison could improve his mirror drawing skills even with full amnesia? This episode on the Tetris effect I made should give you some answers. What's the weirdest interface screw you've ever run into? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and share the video, and definitely subscribe if you want to see more stuff just like this. And I will see you next time.